All right, so today we are going to continue our look at social learning by taking a look at modeling. So if you're pretty sure that there is more to life than being really, really ridiculously good looking, and you plan on finding out, oh, wait a second, wait, wrong type of modeling. Okay, the actual modeling that we're going to look at today is the flip side of imitation. So last time we looked at imitation, and now we're going to take a look at the guidelines of effective modeling. How can you make it so that your behavior gets imitated and you can influence other? So we're going to take a look at those guidelines, like getting enough sleep, having a skincare regimen. Oh man, wrong modeling again. All right, so before I step back into the world of Zoolander, let's go on this video because I am Dr. Igor Yurichevich and this is behavior modification. Let's go. All right, so today we're going to continue our look at social learning theory. So last time we introduced this idea and we took a look at a quote from Albert Bandura and his book, Social Learning Theory. So we're going to revisit that because it is a great foundation for the importance of social learning theory. And what he mentioned in his chapter on social learning theory on page 22 was that human functioning would be exceedingly inefficient, not to mention dangerous, if behavior were controlled only by directly experienced consequences. So we visited this idea last time that human functioning, aka also learning, would be very inefficient and it could be very dangerous if the only way we could learn was by directly experiencing the consequences. But we have ways of learning by indirectly experiencing the consequences, basically through social learning, learning from the experiences of others. So we're not going to use this one for our look at modeling today. We're actually going to go to an earlier section of that same chapter on page 7. And here, Bandura talks about modeling specifically and goes on to say that some forms of modeling are so intrinsically rewarding that they can hold the attention of people of all ages for extended periods of time. And that is what we're going to focus on today, because he mentions that some forms of modeling are very, very effective and can just hold the attention and therefore change the behavior and induce or cause more imitation. So what are those some forms of modeling? How can we make sure that our modeling falls into those some forms of modeling? Well, before we tackle these guidelines on effective modeling, let's make sure that we get straight on what our definition of modeling actually is. So the definition of modeling that we're going to be using is, again, this is a behavior modification definition of modeling. And this is the idea that modeling is a behavior change strategy where learners acquire new behaviors by observing and imitating a model's demonstration. And these models can be live, real persons, or they can be symbolic, video, audio, picture. So importantly here, we have this idea of learners acquiring new behaviors. And this is done not through reinforcement, but by observing and then imitating a model's demonstration. So as I mentioned, models, they can be live. They can be an actual real person, for example, or they can be symbolic. They can be a video, audio, or a picture. So an example of a live model would be a coach that is demonstrating puck control in hockey by actually doing the puck control behavior. So in this case, we have a live modeling of the behavior, and the child who's trying to learn, the player who's trying to learn how to play hockey, is going to imitate that behavior. So that's an example of live modeling. You can also have symbolic modeling. So that is where you use, for example, not the actual behavior, but a symbol that stands in for the behavior, like a picture. So in this case, we have the modeling, symbolic modeling, where a coach is explaining the play using diagrams on a clipboard. So he's drawing out the plays, is explaining where you need to be positioned. He's not live modeling this by actually putting himself in those positions, but he's using symbolic modeling, basically saying, well, here's a picture of what you need to do. So now you've seen it, you can go out and imitate it. And this symbolic modeling also includes video modeling. So this is where a learner will perform the behavior after they watch a video of somebody else performing it. And this also falls into symbolic modeling. It might seem like live modeling, especially if it's a live action video such as this, but this is actually symbolic modeling if it was a modeling video. And as we've seen before, I'm not going to fall into that trap again. But symbolic modeling also includes video modeling. So just keep that in mind so that you're not confused. If you see a video of a live person, is that live modeling? No. If it's a recording, it's video modeling. Okay, so now that we're straight on what modeling is and how it can be either live or symbolic, let's take a look on some guidelines for effective modeling. So these are guidelines that will make the model more effective, make the model more likely to get imitated, and also make the imitation more likely to match the behavior that was modeled, which is exactly what we want. So what are these guidelines for effective modeling? Well, the first one is model learner similarity. And model learner similarity is basically the idea that models who share characteristics with the learner are more likely to be imitated. So models that share the same age, the same interests, the same background, the same physical features, they are more likely to be imitated by the learner. So for example, a child is more likely to imitate a model that is another child, and they'll jump up and down on that sofa, rather than imitate a model that is their parent and do some meditative yoga, because that child that is jumping up and down is modeling the behavior of the other child, because the physical similarities between the two, the age similarities, the interest similarities, the background between the two is more similar than the child and the parent. Now, this isn't to say that parents cannot be excellent models, because parents share a lot of physical similarities with their children in appearance, in a background, in their culture, for example. But it is the case that the more similar a model and a learner is, the more effective the model will be, the more likely that that learner will imitate a behavior that is modeled, performed by the model. All right, next guideline for effective modeling, next factor that impacts how effective a model is the prestige of the model. So it just happens that high status individuals, high status in the eyes of the learner, so things, people like celebrities, respected figures, athletes, they are way more likely to influence imitation. So fans imitate the fashion of famous actors. This is why people tune in to those red carpet videos and take a look at the red carpet trends, because they're more likely to imitate people that they consider to be high status than they consider to be low status. So if you want to be more effective as a model, find out what is high status and what is prestigious in the world of the learner that you're trying to influence, and then make sure that you present that prestige to the learner. It's going to make it more likely that they're going to imitate your behavior. All right, next guideline for effective modeling. You want to emphasize critical features. That is, you want to highlight the essential parts of the behavior, either using tone, or using volume, or using gestures, right? So you can do all of these things to highlight what are the essential parts of a modeled behavior. So for example, in a skincare tutorial, you might want to emphasize the important steps. So you might want to slow down and really zoom in and be like, okay, this is how you put on this, and here, really kind of slow down when they're contouring the nose or doing whatever else you might be doing. So you can highlight those essential features, the features that you know are essential because you're the one that can perform the behavior at a high level. You know what's essential. Make sure that those essential features get exaggerated, get highlighted, get somehow contrasted, so that that will increase the effectiveness of the learning of the modeled behavior. All right, the next one is somewhat related to this, and that is the use of instructions. So the use of instructions is basically where you are highlighting some of the rules of a modeled behavior. So these are either verbal or written instructions that can be given either before or during modeling to increase clarity and the response likelihood. So increase the quality of the imitated response and also increase the likelihood of the imitated response. So a classic example of this is if you're taking a course on business etiquette, you might learn how to do a handshake, and your mentor might give you instructions on how to do a proper business handshake. So they might give you those verbal instructions and say, look, when you're doing this handshake, maintain eye contact. You're going to want a firm grip. You're going to want 3 to 7 pumps. When you disengage, you want to do it this way. They're going to give you those instructions. And it's quite possible that you could learn the behavior of a business handshake just by observing and then just by imitating. But this is going to make it more effective. You're going to get to that high quality handshake much more quickly, and you're going to be much more likely to imitate it if you get those verbal or written instructions beforehand. All right, the next guideline for effective modeling is, as much as possible, use an authentic context. That is, you want to demonstrate the behavior in either a real situation or realistic setting, and that will improve the quality of the imitation. So, for example, let's stay with this example of a business. So you want to role play business meetings. For example, if you are modeling the behavior of a handshake, you want to role play in meetings that are variable in order to increase the effectiveness of the modeling behavior. So you want to model the handshake in a business presentation when you're the only one that is standing. You want to model the handshake in a business meeting where everybody is seated. Now you can imitate the behavior of the handshake when somebody is standing. Now you can imitate the behavior of a handshake when everybody is sitting. You are basically able to generalize now because you have expanded this situation to include a variety of different situations. You have modeled the behavior in a variety of situations, and that allows the learner to generalize and learn the behavior more effectively. All right, next guideline for effective modeling is rehearsal and feedback. So not surprisingly, practice also increases effective modeling. So once you model a behavior, you want to let the learners practice the behavior, and then you want to provide corrective and reinforcing feedback. So this is basically taking positive reinforcement and tacking it on to modeling once the behavior starts to get imitated. So this is to increase the quality of the behavior. So for example, you might model how to give a presentation, how to use the flip chart board, how to draw on there to give an effective presentation. And then what you would do is you would give the learner the chance to rehearse that in a mock scenario, for example. And then after they do their presentation, you want to give them feedback and reinforcement, what was done well, what wasn't done well, maybe emphasize, highlight some of the critical behaviors that they might have missed, give them some more verbal instructions to improve their presentation, and then give them reinforcement. Yeah, this was really good. Yeah, you did really good there. Eye contact was great. And that'll, again, increase the effectiveness of the modeling and increase the quality of the imitated behavior. Next guideline for effective modeling is to actually reinforce imitation. So reinforce both the modeled behavior. So reinforce the behavior that is getting imitated, like that was a really good handshake, but then also reinforce the act of imitation. So an example here, if a child is learning to brush their teeth, they get praised for correctly copying a modeled toothbrushing routine. So they get praised for the for the modeled behavior. So you would say things like, wow, that's some great toothbrushing. Yes, you did a great job on your teeth. Wow, your teeth look so clean. So the actual imitated behavior gets reinforced, but then also importantly, the act of imitating gets reinforced. So you might say to them, you might look at them and give them some social reinforcement and say, wow, you're just like me. A chip off the old block. Oh my goodness, I love it so much. I see myself in you. Basically what you're saying is, hey, you imitated me and I like that. And I'm going to reinforce that. And I want that imitation to occur more often in the future. So you want to reinforce not just the imitated behavior, but you also want to reinforce the imitation itself and let them know, hey, you imitated me. That's a good thing. You're going to get rewarded for that. The consequence of imitation is that you get reinforced for it. All right, next guideline. And this is the final guideline. You want to see the model get reinforced themselves. So we just talked about reinforcing the learner, reinforcing the imitator, but you also want the learner to see the model get reinforced. So this is going to increase imitation when a learner can observe the model being rewarded as well. So let's say that the daughter and the father was modeling the toothbrushing behavior and the daughter imitated it by brushing her own teeth. If the daughter then sees the father get approval, get reinforced from their mother for brushing his teeth, that is going to increase imitation in the future as well. So if the mother comes along and she goes to the father who modeled the behavior, not the child, but the father who modeled the behavior and said, wow, don't your teeth look great? Ooh, your breath smells so fresh. It's like, oh, I want to kiss your lips so bad because it's just those clean teeth are calling to me, I guess. I don't know. Whatever it is, if he gets reinforced for toothbrushing, that's going to make the learner way more likely to imitate that behavior in the future as well. All right, so that was our look at modeling. So today we took a look at our definition of modeling. We talked about what it is. We talked about the different types of modeling, live modeling and symbolic modeling. Mentioned that symbolic modeling includes video modeling, so modeling in a video format. And then we took a look at the guidelines for effective modeling. Basically, how can you make your behavior more effective in producing imitation in others? So we talked about model-learner similarity, the prestige of the model, emphasizing the critical features, use of instructions, rehearsal and feedback, reinforcement of the imitation, both of the imitative behavior and the active imitation, and then finally letting that learner see the model get reinforced. And that wraps up not just this video for today, but that actually wraps up our journey through behavior modification. So whether you've been here since the beginning or you just joined us for modeling and social learning, I just want to thank you for coming along. This may be the last video in the behavior modification series, but it's not the end of the conversation. So there are plenty more psychology topics waiting for you on this channel, from cognitive psychology to experimental design, everything in between. So if you're ready to keep exploring how the mind works, why we do what we do, how we learn, I'll see you in the next video. And until then, stay frosty, stay functional, and go out and modify some behavior. So if you're pretty sure that there is more to life than being really, really ridiculously good looking,
did you ever think that maybe there's more to life than being really, really, really ridiculously good looking?